Hello, and on this episode of the Inventive Marketing Club, we are going to be looking at the relevance of Twitter, or should I say X. We're going to have a look at how it is relevant in today's digital landscape. Does it really have the media sway that it used to? And are there, looking at some of the newcomers to the micro-blogging format that is Twitter, such as Thread and Mastodon, are they going to take over? Are they sort of taking over from the role that Twitter had? It's a bit of an open discussion. I don't know where it's going to go, but there's been some massive changes at Twitter, /X, and I thought it'd be good to talk about them. With me today is Jonathan Pollinger, who is very much an expert in all forms of social media, both training people on how to use them, but also helping businesses doing the business that work for businesses himself as well, and providing that social media output in a very professional format. Jonathan, I'll get you to introduce yourself briefly in a second. And then Heidi as well from Minx Media, who does a lot of PR using social media, very active in that front as well. So both of you use social media a lot, and so hopefully have some ideas on, whether Twitter's doing the right thing here, or should I say X is doing the right thing, and what the future of it is. So Jonathan, briefly, would you introduce yourself, then over to Heidi, then we'll get on with the discussion.
Sure. So Jonathan, 14 years experience, coming up anniversary next month, actually, as a freelance social media trainer, and also a couple of years ago, as Ben mentioned, founded Boost Social Agency, where we provide strategies, create content, and manage advertising and campaigns. But we focus only on B2B businesses there, whereas my training side, I've got a whole mix of clients. So I've trained one-man bands, plumbers, electricians, MPs, large PLCs, local government, a wide variety of clients. And yeah, as Ben says, pretty familiar with all the main social networks, and where it's appropriate to help companies achieve their business objectives using those, I will pick the most appropriate one or ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do follow Jonathan to see what his experiences is, certainly when it's new platforms, and seeing what your ideas are. So definitely one to follow. Heidi, just a brief introduction from you, if that's okay.
Yeah, hi, I'm Heidi Chamberlain-Jones, and I have two businesses. One is Minx Media Limited, which is a business development consultancy where we do marketing, PR, we do training in marketing, and also leadership and management training and consultancy to help businesses build their marketing and business strategies. The other side of the business is Eat, Sleep, Live Herefordshire, which is the DMO, or destination marketing organisation for Herefordshire, that tells people all the great places to eat, sleep and enjoy while they're visiting the area or in their leisure time.
Yeah, you've got a great resource on Eat, Sleep, Live Herefordshire as well. There's lots of useful information. The new iteration for sure, but you do all the hard work, and pulling all that event information together and all those listings is dedication to the cause for sure. I also forget how much you do in Minx Media as well. You truly are a very busy person, Heidi.
I do it alone. I have a fabulous Amanda with me, so yes.
Yeah, we definitely all need an Amanda. She's great. So I'm just going to set the scene very briefly in terms of Twitter. So Twitter has been a kind of dominant platform for up to the moment information and news. It's not a dominant platform in terms of users or active users, but in terms of where people want to go to get the very latest news, if that's their thing. Twitter's been a big place for that. It's certainly been overtaken by Facebook and other platforms in terms of just general usage and income, I would imagine, for them as well. But it's always been in the background. It's always been there. In fact, when was it started? 2006, I think. So it's quite some time it's been running. Elon Musk acquired it not long ago. I was just having a look before we started recording, and it's just back in 2022. So it's just last year. In fact, October last year, he acquired it for about $44 billion. Quite a significant amount, and from that point he's proceeded to take it apart bit by bit, and it looks effectively like he's streamlining it, but also it appears to be doing a lot of things that potentially cause damage, certainly from an advertiser's point of view. Who will time will tell if what he's doing makes sense and works. One of the biggest things he's done more recently is rebranded the entire organization to X. So it is just the symbol X. So it's not Twitter anymore, it's X, which is confusing in many ways. It also means a lot of work for me, having to go around client websites and changing the logos over to X, which is frustrating because it means I need to upgrade for Font Awesome. But hey, that's another story. The other thing I will add is that Musk has said he wants to make it the everything app. So I think his ultimate goal for it seems, is that he wants people to use X for all sorts of things, including e-commerce, banking, and so on. So we'll see where that's going to take us. But perhaps, Jonathan, you might have some more up-to-date, more detail on what's going on with Twitter X. Anything interesting from your perspective?
I think you've given it a pretty good summary there in terms of the recent history and what has happened. I would say if we are looking at the sort of positives of Twitter/X right now, it's still being used for news, very much so. But I wonder whether that's going to continue, because yeah, feel free to sort of like flick around the screen actually and maybe click a few
Martin Lewis, always good to have a look at.
Trends on the right hand side there. But actually, if you click one of those trends, it might illustrate one of my points here, because I think what's happening is that a lot of it's getting diluted in terms of spammers coming on, people hijacking the hashtag for completely irrelevant type of content.
Right.
And it's not really quite giving you the focused news that it used to in the past. What you've just clicked on there is probably actually kind of proving me wrong, because that did look
that was good.
All pretty sort of Broncos at Chiefs content there coming in. But particularly for fast moving stuff, it seems to affect fast moving stuff. So like the current Gaza-Israel situation, for example, people will be latching onto that hashtag. If you click like latest there, I doubt that we'll actually get very much latest sort of serious news straight away from reliable news sources. I mean, you're even getting foreign languages there, which is kind of not quite right for what you want. That one there is something about looks like a Logan Paul fight or something, and somebody started on the hashtag there, or some reference to Gaza. They're not quite
just
sure
mentioning Gaza. Yeah, I mean, that's always been the case a little bit, hasn't it? That people have been using hashtags to get in there. But do you think that's got the overall health of Twitter is worse, that they're just not monitoring that to sort of tamp down the ones that aren't relevant?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think it's two things on that. One, in terms of actually monitoring the content, and in terms of, I think they're going to be getting into trouble from the EU if they haven't already in very recent hours, in terms of misinformation and sort of poor content that is spreading around the platform. And on top of that, they've allowed back a load of, should we say, bad actors onto the platform as well. So I would say both in terms of content and people, moderation has slipped. You mentioned the streamlining. So, it was a conscious decision to basically axe the entire safety department at what was Twitter. So there's just very few people actually doing that job, and they're relying on technology to a certain extent to sort of filter out negative and unwanted content, should we say? But that's not necessarily doing as good as job as a department and real humans. There's not really much oversight for that. So I'd say the quality of news is going down. But it was interesting if I throw in sort of like politics as well, because I think very much journalists, because of the news side of it, politicians, MPs, councillors are all still using it. But I almost get the sense that they're beginning to talk into a bit of a void. There is a certain amount of people still remaining on that service if you're associated on Twitter, if you're associated or interested in those areas. But bit by bit, as I say, the quality is kind of like going down. The number of people is going down because there's a big sort of migration off Twitter, and there's certainly hardly any new people coming on. Reference to sort of like downloads, in terms of where it is in the download charts, it's way down. So yeah, there's no sort of new blood coming on there. So I think at some point news organizations and let's say your UK MPs are probably going to click and go somewhere else. But for now, they are sort of remaining on there. And also, I think you alluded to small businesses, and I think small businesses are also doing the same thing. I think they're kind of like several people are still sort of posting away, but some probably almost more out of habit. I think
Yeah,
it's got
I
to
think it
that
is
sort of
habit. Yeah.
stage, and in time they're going to realize it's not really doing them much good. So I think it is a platform very much on the decline.
Yeah.
Just to sort of pick up on the branding as well. I mean, the rebrand was a total disaster in my opinion. I mean, the value of Twitter as a brand was absolutely huge. You know, the fact that they were getting mentions literally every hour of the day in some country of the world on TV, radio, and websites. Even the word like tweet. You know, the value of actually having that and them not having to pay for that was absolutely huge. You can't put a value on that. And now that's like gone. You know, nobody says X, and in fact they use the word post, which is just the same as Facebook, Threads, Pinterest, or anything else.
Well, it's sown confusion, hasn't it? I mean,
yeah,
there's you don't know what to call it. If you call it X, people
yeah,
may not have heard of the changes, so they don't know what you're talking about. So you've got to call it Twitter, but then that's inaccurate. So,
yeah,
so Twitter X, like even on Font Awesome, when I'm changing it, it's called X Twitter when you're adding
yeah,
it. So even they have to add both on there.
yeah,
And I think it's been done in a very Musk way, but done sort of pretty quickly and brutally, and in some ways
yeah.
that you know that can be good. But I think when it comes to brand, you really want brand to be changed in a way there that people are comfortable with, that they don't really notice the change, and it feels right to do so.
Exactly. And, you know, we can talk about the rights and wrongs of the branding as marketing people, Ben, but ultimately the purpose of it is to attract new users and to keep users. And if it's like gone to hell, which it has done, you know, that's not going to help them
No, they're
pick
just
up
throwing
new
this on
users
top.
at all. X is not an attractive brand in any shape or form. So yeah, I think it's going to struggle, and it's on the way out in my opinion. Personally, I'm now no longer posting or engaging on Twitter,
Oh,
so I've
right.
got to kind of like maintain a presence, but I'm not on there as
So
such.
how long do you give it? Should we make a prediction? How long do you give it before it really is irrelevant, even if it still exists?
Probably still exists, but not really in the current form. So probably major sort of change in a year. And I don't think the Everything app that you mentioned is that's just not doable. Technology wise and resource wise. Yeah, he's got
Yeah.
like a whole bunch of money, but
Yeah, you
I
need
suppose
people
anything.
for that. Facebook's in a
Yeah,
better position for that.
yeah. I suppose, you know, if you've got money, anything is possible ultimately, but it's going to cost him a whole bunch more. And you know, nobody's asking for this. All the services that we've mentioned, we're all doing very nicely, thank you, already with things like WhatsApp, for
Yeah.
example, and Monzo. So why do we need one app to do everything? And let's face it, you know, who's going to trust the organization backed by Elon Musk to handle your money?
Yeah, and I think it's the consistent. It comes back to consistency. People like consistency. That's why
Yeah,
we like McDonald's. It's consistently what you expect it to be. And I think that's what he's done here. You know, it's very difficult then to start trusting someone who is inconsistent or
yeah,
unpredictable, at least.
yeah.
Heidi, what do you think from I know you use it, or you use social platforms anyway for your clients, part of what you do. Do you use Twitter? Is that still active in terms of your promotion?
Well, it's really interesting and actually very comforting to have somebody like Jonathan who's using this all the time and is much more of an authority on these things than I am at the moment. To hear that you're not actually using X yourself. I'm not using it either. We stopped, certainly for Eat, Sleep, Live Well, for both of my businesses. I stopped using it a little while ago, possibly 6 months ago, because it got to a point where we thought, okay, we need to bring our social media back in-house. What is you measure, you monitor who's your target audience, what are they using? Because as I always advocate to my customers, you can't do it all, you shouldn't do it all, because not all of your customers are doing it all. So go to where the biggest reach is for you, and that's what we did. And we saw that X or Twitter was the lowest denominator between the ones that we were using. So I stopped posting and took a deep breath and thought, okay, what's going to happen? And absolutely nothing has happened.
No change, yeah.
From a B2B point of view, I've noticed that a lot of the people that we want to support in terms of sharing their content or things like that, which is part of our remit to our membership, they were posting the same things, which I always shudder at, the same things across all of their social media platforms. They'd set them to share, so it didn't matter, because if I didn't see it on Twitter, I'd see it on their Facebook or on their Instagram. And so I wasn't missing out in that way. Were we missing out in terms of our output? It doesn't seem to matter. Nobody said, oh, we haven't seen you on there. In terms of gleaning information and news, I can still keep up with what I want to know about via LinkedIn, perhaps on a B2B side. I follow people like Martin Lewis, and he's on so many other platforms that I can keep up with things like that. I was finding that Twitter, as it was, and X more so now, as you absolutely say, Jonathan, it's so crowded with things that you don't want. But on the other hand, I was using things like TweetDeck to segregate all of my content and really be able to zone in and not be having all the noise of the stuff I didn't want. So because I've stopped using Twitter, I'm not using TweetDeck and things like that now, and I'm using other apps. So I thought perhaps I was missing out on information, but I absolutely don't feel like that. And very interesting to hear where you feel it might be going, because Elon Musk, certainly with my leadership and management hat on, is very visionary as a leader. He's very fast paced. He's like, oh, let's do this next. And you have to stick in your lane. You have to do what you're good at. And it's all very well buying people that can do all the things you can't do and thinking, yes, I'll take over this company and all the experts with it. But that transition, as we've said, isn't always good. And people worked for Twitter before for various reasons, not just because they were doing what they were doing. There would have been all sorts of cultural things to do with that. And that culture will have changed with the new leader. Some gel with it, some don't. And all the ambitious things that you said that he's looking at being, you can't be all things to all people. It's not healthy to try and be all things to all people. I would certainly look at something and say, I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket as a consumer.
Exactly.
And it's fascinated me to see how just because somebody has got a lot of money and an interest in something, that they feel they can scoop it up and take on what somebody else has done and take it forward when it's not their field of specific expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at a company like Facebook, which has a lot of users, and they're doing well, I think, from a financial side of things. And even they have multiple platforms because, and even starting up a new one, Threads, that we'll talk about briefly. They've got multiple platforms because people they can't get all of the people on their one platform. I'd imagine that they would like Facebook to be everything. And Facebook is a lot of things. And that's part of what makes it confusing, actually, for me. And I find it that it can do so many things that you get stuck in a certain corner unless you're using it all the time. So to actually have an everything app is a ambitious goal, but I'm not sure it's going to be something that people, as you say, Jonathan, want or really need, because we're quite well served. Doesn't mean it's not, there's not. Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes people don't know what they need or want until you show them. And then they go, oh, well, that's clear. You look at the iPhone and not having a keyboard on it. That's not what people wanted. People wanted a keyboard on their phones, but the iPhone did it a different way. And actually, that's what we really wanted. So that kind of, just for me to add on Twitter, I personally stopped using it quite some time ago. I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, I stopped using it because I just wasn't getting anything from it. I just found that following Threads was quite awkward on it, following conversations, that there was a lot of stuff that I wasn't interested in, even though I was quite good about following the right people. So I didn't get anything from it. So I stopped using it. I think Claire was posting our content to Twitter for some time, but we just stopped because we're not getting anything from it. What's the point? It's just not working for us, as you said, Heidi. But since all of these changes that certainly buying X and all of these changes that we've talked about, that has caused a lot of people to leave because they don't like what's going on there, or it's just caused them to think about, well, should I be on here? Is it healthy for me? Is it the right place for me? Am I getting business from it? And then they're sort of looking around to these other places, and there's a bit of a vacuum that's being created that other apps are trying to fill, Facebook or Meta, should I say, included. So it might be good just to talk through a couple of those different apps that have sprung up. Should we start with Mastodon, as I think that's the one that's been going the longest? When was I'm looking at my notes here? 2016 is what I've got on from Wikipedia as to when it started. I remember, I think this was before Musk took it over. There was some controversy in Twitter, and that caused a load of nerds, sort of nerdy people, to sort of leave Twitter and go to Mastodon. So I think there was a sort of an initial bump, maybe 3 years ago, something like that. I seem to remember. I don't know the exact dates, but. And then obviously the recently with Elon Musk, that's caused another huge wave of people to move to Mastodon. I think sort of it rose to, it was more known about, certainly in the wider media, that this was a viable option. And we'll talk about a key difference in Mastodon, because there's sort of a fundamental architecture difference with Mastodon over Twitter. But if I just scroll to it here, essentially it's very similar. We've got posts of all the people you follow in a linear format. I can actually not sure. I don't use Mastodon myself. I'm not sure if there's an algorithmic feed that sort of tries to sift through and present you with the most relevant post first, or if it's just purely timeline date descending order. But it's very similar in its nature. And we'll come on to, like, there's a sort of fundamental difference in the way it works that could potentially be interesting in the future, called ActivityPub. But I want to come to that at the end. So this is Mastodon. What do you think of this, Jonathan? Should we go with you first? If you use Mastodon, do you use it with your clients? Do you talk about it? What's your feeling?
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I've had a kind of like brief look at it, but it strikes me as being, like, you use the word nerd, and I think it is kind of like,
this is the first thing that comes up about Ubuntu. Someone very cross about something going on there.
Yeah, it has kind of got that vibe, and I know you're going to talk about the sort of distributed architecture and stuff, but there's that side of it as well, which also makes it a bit geeky and harder for people to get their heads around and understand. So I think for the man in the street, Mastodon and others, all the other sort of similar ones, that basically all the non-meta ones, Blue Sky, etc., that I would, in terms of clients right now, I wouldn't go anywhere near them, because I just don't think they're mainstream enough, and probably won't be either. So yeah, there's always going to be sort of smaller social networks around, but if you're looking to do something in a business sense, then yeah, sure, if you sell Linux or something, or you're a Linux developer, then yeah, absolutely, that's probably the ideal platform for you. But any kind of, like, I don't know, retail business, let's say, or architecture business or whatever like that, no, there's going to be better options, just because of the sheer number of people involved and the type of people currently on those on those platforms. I can't really see them getting any momentum. Two reasons, they are very geeky in terms of both people on them and how they're set up and how they run, and they haven't got, kind of linked with that, but they haven't got the backing of a larger kind of like experienced, the social side of social networking, if you like. So your Meta, for example, that know it back to front, having been in it for nearly 20 years now. So yeah, they've got the big advantage, I think, when it comes to capturing attention from disaffected Twitter users. And yeah, we're going to talk about Threads, but I think they're better placed. So yeah, so to answer the question, no, I'm not really that interested in it. Obviously, I'm going to keep an eye on it, but I'm certainly not doing any work or any training in that area whatsoever.
Yeah, definitely want to keep an eye on. Heidi, very briefly, are you using Mastodon at all?
No, not looked at it at all. Not something I'm looking at with my customers. I'm quite curious about the concept of having certain apps and platforms for specific industries and those communities. But that can be created within the ones that are there. Surely they all, they all go to groups. You've got these groups and everything. So I'm not sure, again, for exactly the same reasons Jonathan's saying, and it's not something I'm focusing on. People have enough to do to keep up with the mainstream things that have got that mass audience already that they need.
Yeah, exactly. So well, actually, what I'll do as a crossover is we'll just very briefly talk about ActivityPub. I'm not going to dive into a huge detail on it. Technically, I think it's quite interesting as an idea. But what Mastodon is a brand really that sits. They've developed this concept that sits on an idea of ActivityPub, and that is a social networking protocol, if you will. It's a bit like if you think about email. And we've got the protocol of SMTP, which allows us to send emails from one server to another, from one person to another through this protocol. This is very similar. It's a way of exchanging social messages and then having some coherency. So we know who they're from, and then what order they go in. And then basically a server like Mastodon, so in this case, mastodon.social, can sit on top of that and basically present them in like Twitter does. You can run your own Mastodon instance. So you can download Mastodon, the software, and run your own, just like you can run your own mail server. The problem is then, just like running a mail service, you've got to deal with spam. You've got to deal with the responsibility of monitoring the content that goes through it. So yes, the nice thing about ActivityPub is that anyone can manage their own mini social network and connect in with the larger social networks, but they can then have a responsibility on their hands to do that. So it's very intriguing. How that's going to take off, whether it will take off, I don't know. I know that WordPress has recently released an update so that your blogs can be published into ActivityPub, so people can follow a website in that format. So it's all quite interesting. But it leads me on to Threads, which is a Meta product released pretty recently, actually. They've had quite an accelerated development on it. And Threads is promising, or have said they will, develop for ActivityPub so that you can be on Threads and follow people in other social networks. However, they're not doing that for the moment. And what they've launched is quite a very simplistic version of Twitter, which some people might find better. And Jonathan, I will let you explain a bit more detail in it. You'll probably say it a lot better than me. But I think one of the groundings they've started with is using Instagram's base audience and your username on Instagram as a starter to really get people in quickly. And I think that's how they managed to grow numbers pretty quickly, certainly in the interim when people are checking it out. I don't use Twitter. I literally signed up for it this morning. I don't use any of these. I only use LinkedIn. But, it looks quite simplistic. Maybe, Jonathan, take over a little bit to tell us a little bit more about Threads and what you think about it.
Yeah, so Threads, as you say, very much LinkedIn with Meta and Instagram. Smart move being allowed to use the username takes about, if you signed up, did it take you about 30 seconds? I imagine so, because they made
I had to reach my app, so I was like, I have to go to my
okay.
phone, and it wouldn't take long.
Normally,
not
it's very streamlined because you haven't got to do name or any other information or email even, because it's got all of that. So assuming that you're on Instagram, and you do have to have an Instagram account to have a Threads account. So it's got that good link, and you can share from one to the other, so that helps with their publicizing both sides. And they've even taken to suggesting putting in sort of posts over on recommended posts, if you like, from Threads over on the Instagram feed to increase awareness. And they're probably going to do more of that, I would suspect, almost like running their own ads, if you like. But of course, they're not really, strictly speaking, ads, because it's all almost part and parcel of the same thing. In terms of how it works, kind of like Twitter, but currently sort of without the news, because there aren't any trending topics. You can use hashtags, but they're not active, so they're not like linked in any way. So they're really just used as keywords. So I mean, overall, I like it. It's very conversational. They seem to have done a pretty good job with their experience of filtering out spam and unwanted content. And overall, the vibe seems to be, I'd even go as far as used words like kind and happy place. And certainly in terms of the new people that I've interacted with. And that's really the key. The key words are interaction, conversation and engagement if you're going to get anything out of it. You've got to work quite hard to do those things, but then you reap the rewards of awareness, getting to know people, business relationships, or interest, hobbies, that kind of community side.
Is it like the sort of early days of Twitter? Because that sounds like what Twitter used to feel like.
You know what it is? It's kind of like 2010 Twitter, to be honest, where everyone kind of like seems to know each other. They say hello to each other. It's kind of that kind of like vibe. So yes, you can add links. So you can put links to a blog post or anything like that. But it's almost like noticeable that people aren't really using it to promote business too much. It's still probably it's so new really in the scheme of things that people are almost like still figuring out how to use it, both from a social point of view and a business point of view. And personally, for now, I will sort of put in a link for information, but I'll rarely, if ever, actually do a promo only post on Threads. So I don't use it in that way, and I think other people are the same. So it's more for me. It's more of almost like a life thing. It's just more an extension of a coffee shop, if you like, kind of thing for me. Yeah. And others I would say the same. They started it off a little bit, I would say, half-baked because they wanted to capture the moment when Twitter/X was in crisis. So they launched probably sooner than, well, they did launch sooner than they anticipated. So that meant it was missing a whole bunch of stuff.
Including the web interface. I don't think that existed at the time.
Exactly, yeah. And search was a biggie as well. So search is relatively new, but they've been working, to be fair, hand over fist, and new features dropping in every week. And even last night, very interesting, 2 new features. Voice notes, a bit like WhatsApp voice notes, and LinkedIn actually, where you can record a quick audio note, but with a twist, it actually transcribes your words.
So like, that's like, it feels like it should do that, really.
It's really cool. Yeah, if you go to my profile, actually, if you want to look it up, just look for my name or Pollinger Social, you'll kind of like see an example. I'll be able to explain it a bit better. So that makes it quite interesting. So you can basically just record, click the microphone and record something really quickly on your phone, and like the one at the top there. And so basically I just recorded that, and then I didn't have to type that. So it just types that in automatically for you. So it transcribes it, which is quite interesting. So, I mean, it's literally, who am I to make a prediction as it launched last night? But I'm going to make a bit of a bold prediction now, because especially as Twitter tried it and it failed, no one liked it, and they withdrew it pretty quick. I think it's going to be huge on here. I just think it's a better place for it. And I can't even say it's popular yet because it's literally been around for hours, but I just get
it's so new
that people are going to have some fun for it. And maybe just that transcription thing is just the twist that voice notes needs, because sometimes voice notes irritates people because they got to play the file. But of course, in this case, you haven't actually got to play the file. But there's a lot of stuff already about, oh, I didn't know you sounded like that, and funny stuff like your voice doesn't match your profile picture and things like this. So I think people are going to have quite a lot of fun with it. And also in terms of like the business side of, well, both social and business side of things, I think that does something great for building relationships, because you've got that voice dimension, and so you can get to know that person a little bit better, I think. So
and it's not a video which it's not a video which can add extra pressure, I think.
Yeah. So a quick like click the mic and then talk into your phone. It's just like so much. Maybe even though I haven't even checked if it's on desktop, to be honest. But that's going to be really quick and convenient to do. And also last night they introduced editing of posts. So on X you've got to pay $8 a month for that. So that's quite cool that they brought that in. So you can edit, I think, within the first 5 minutes. So that's something that people were asking for on Twitter for years, and then
for years, exactly. Yeah, they only more recently brought it in.
It was literally years. It was literally since about 2010, as mentioned earlier. So because of typos and things like that. So it's they've just done it. They've just gone ahead and done it, nicely implemented. Little symbol there, so you know that a thread is edited. And Bosch. So they are bringing out these things week by week, and these are quite major features. and things like lists and hashtags and trending topics are all in the works. So it's going to be really good, actually, feature-wise, once it's all That's the edit symbol there. I don't know if you can just see that on that
Oh,
screenshot, just the one above in the black.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
the
So
little
that's what
squiggle.
the squiggle looks like. So yeah.
No, it's cool. Heidi,
That's
have
good.
you had an opportunity to use Threads?
No, I haven't yet, for the same reasons really that we've not had the capacity to do it. We do, it's just been out of our realm. But really interesting to hear what Jonathan is saying. And also previously, when you had the general screen and the thread of the threads on, I noticed there was a post by a company that said, "Hi, we still haven't managed to find all of our friends from the other platform that shall not be named." They and they said, but please give us a share and a post and all of that. So yeah, so Jonathan, if you were to move from X to Threads, how would you capture all of your, well, you wouldn't be able to capture them all because they wouldn't have an account, but how would you be able to try and claim all your followers and encourage them to come across? How would you do that?
Yeah, there's only really two ways. There isn't, as you say, there's no, obviously they're not arch enemies, are they? But there's no relationship between Twitter and Meta technically, so you can't like export your followers or anything like that. But two ways I would say: post something on Twitter, either via a tweet or in your bio, or both, to explain where you've gone, and put your address on Threads. And then once you're over on Threads, use the search to find people, and then you can interact with your people, if you like, over there, because you can search for accounts and you can search for content. So the latter is a good way of actually finding new people. So, for example, I found a whole bunch of people interested in running that I wasn't in contact with before. So the search is pretty good now that it has been launched. And yeah, you're probably going to come across people algorithmically as well. So what you tend to find is on this one is that when people that you are connected with, when they interact with other people, you sort of see their content. That seems to be one of the main algorithmic drivers, which is quite clever, because chances are, if your mate is interacting with their mate and you don't know them, you might actually be interested in their mate, if you see what I mean. So you can then just sort of follow them and build your audience that way. So yeah, so I guess three ways to answer your question: post about it on Twitter, X, use the search, and the algorithm might do some work for you as well.
I think also, because it's coming from Facebook, if you sign in with your Facebook account, it's going to allow you to use your Facebook username and pull in people that you already follow on Facebook anyway.
Good point. Forgot that one.
Oh, sorry,
yeah,
Instagram, not Facebook. So that would
Instagram
get you
rather than
started.
Facebook. But you're right. Yeah, it literally. I think there's literally, when you probably experience. I'd forgotten that one because it's so long since I signed up.
It did exactly that.
Probably,
It basically
you probably had that this
people.
morning. You can literally follow all, can't you? I think when you sign up. So good point, Ben. I'd forgotten.
And then once it does that, it then also does like Twitter used to, probably still does. Then it gives you other recommendations based on that anyway. So I think it's probably a good opportunity to sort of weed out your followers and the people you're following anyway. So it's a good opportunity to do that, and a good opportunity to reach out to people and sort of only get the people following who care about what you've got to say anyway, which is always good. I always like to do that with email lists, so it's probably no bad thing to do it in this context as well.
This highlights a question for me, actually, and I wonder, gentlemen, if you can answer this. If you are using several different platforms, I find that quite often that those do have different demographics on those platforms, and I'm a great advocate of don't post the same posts and share them across all three platforms, because what's the point in people following you everywhere if they're just seeing the same content? So how would you see the Threads content versus an Instagram content and versus a Facebook content? I mean, it's social media at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say it's more conversational, and I think the things that are going to lend into that are the sort of voice notes and the fact that you can be quite comfortable to do a text only post here, whereas perhaps you definitely physically can't on Instagram, can you?
No.
And Facebook, probably 95% of posts have a picture or a video with them these days. So the fact that it's text only, that kind of like Threads lends itself to that, which brings us back to the point about it's more conversational. So it's more about replies and reposts and comments rather than read my latest blog post kind of thing.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the conversation. That's why I like Twitter. It's like being part of a community where people you meet, you can follow them on Twitter, have a little bit of conversation, see what they're up to, not necessarily what they're eating, but if they've gone anywhere interesting or they've got some interesting news, rather than just seeing posts from businesses. I don't mind that, but it needs to be more conversation. I think that works better, certainly for me. So I absolutely echo what you're saying there, Jonathan.
Yeah, if you look at some of the big brands as well that are on there, give you a few to sort of follow, like Monzo are very good. So they sort of talk about anything to do with money. If you look them up, you'll sort of like see that. So any sort of a vague kind of connection with money, not necessarily banking, they will they'll come up with something around that quite often. And with sort of money sort of like tips as well. The TV companies are quite good fun because they have a bit of banter between them. So Channel 4 and ITV, quite good. And I'm not sure whether I was getting them mixed up, whether it's Lidl or Aldi, but they're both, I think Aldi, maybe Lidl on there as well, but are quite good.
Excuse me saying, I'm sure that's a man thing, this Lidl and Aldi muddle up. It's four letters with two L's in, and it never works. My husband never gets it right.
I think it's the number 4, Ben, for Channel 4.
Oh right, okay. I can't find Aldi here either.
But I'm not sure why that's not working. But yeah, so there's a few good accounts there, and there are quite a lot of their posts you might have seen on the well, if you look at Channel 4 now, a lot of theirs will be text only. Well, there you go, they're all text only. So that's kind of like
it's so neat. That interface, just from an interface point of view, is lovely. It's not. I mean, at some point it will clutter. They've got to put ads on it at some point. It's got to start paying for itself. But at the moment, it looks very nice. It's not cluttered.
Yeah, look at the one. Look at the one to ITV 4 days ago. That's quite funny. Where they've added ITV.
Oh, yeah.
Where they say "Well done."
Oh, then well done on the new show and a very good social campaign. Yeah. And interestingly, the post on the very top of their thread at the moment is talking about threads and some statistics.
Yeah. So maybe this is just
they're making that up. Yeah, they're having a bit of.
Oh, are they? Do you think?
One. But yeah, but look at the engagement on that. That's quite good for a new platform. You don't often see 1,800 likes on Twitter these days for anything, and the 97 replies kind of like hopefully illustrates what I was saying about the conversation. People are having to.
I love the way they're illustrating that as well.
We things like that.
We're going to need to wrap this up, but I do feel that we're going to have a dedicated session on threads because there's a lot. Maybe there's a lot to go into here, just in terms of how it works. I think it's a really nice.
And it's emerging all the time. So by the time you get around to doing that, Ben, there'll be a whole bunch of other stuff to talk about on threads.
Exactly. I think that's been interesting. And so have we touched on everything? We've got X, we've got Mastodon, we mentioned Blue Sky. You can't even sign up for Blue Sky yet unless you've got you need an invite code. So I go through creating a new account. I want to use it. It has a similar idea to ActivityPub where you can use it with multiple providers, but it's only Blue Sky offering it at the moment. Go next. Oh, I need an invite code still, and I don't know if that is actually damaging them a little bit. And just out of interest, before we finish, I was just talking to Claire before we began. We're talking about MySpace or something like, and it's and then I thought, is that still going? I have a feeling it is. Yeah, it's something is still there, which is quite interesting to see. Nice to see these things on the internet don't die, even if they're not really used by a huge amount of people. I think that's been quite an interesting conversation. I've certainly for me, I haven't really taken a dive into the sort of realm of the Twitter and Twitter style microblogging and that sort of conversational space. So it's been really good and always great to have you both on again. I know you've got sort of both actively using a lot more than me, have a lot more intelligence about how useful these two things are. So thank you for coming on. Jonathan, where can people find you online? Maybe even on Threads?
Yeah, so at Pollinger Social, same as it is on Threads, is me on all social media channels, or all the main ones certainly, and pollingersocial.co.uk is my website. Thank you very much.
Lovely. And Heidi, where should people go to find you?
Well, for Minx Media, I would look for my name, Heidi Chamberlain-Jones, on LinkedIn for most things there. I'm not so active on social media for that, but for if you're interested in coming to Herefordshire or looking for look on at Eat, Sleep, Live Herefordshire across Instagram. And yes, thank you very much. That's my website. That's minxmedia.co.uk or eatsleepliveherefordshire.co.uk and Eat, Sleep, Live Herefordshire on Instagram and Facebook predominantly.
Yeah, we'll make sure all of those are linked so that people can follow you, learn from you, and maybe engage with you if they need your services, which I'd highly recommend. So thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone else, for watching this episode of the Inventive Marketing Club. You can learn more, find more great episodes, and join us at ratherinventive.com/club. That's ratherinventive.com/club. Thank you, and goodbye for now.